Okay, wealth is about more than just money and material possessions, of course. It's about well being. And as my guest today all knows all too well, here with me is Keisha Blair, who I met, or should I say, met a few years ago. We stayed in contact over the years. And though we have not met in person, we have supported each other in whatever way we could. To introduce Keisha, Keisha is a trained economist with extensive experience in public, private, and not for profit sectors. Keisha started her career working on economic development projects sponsored by the World Bank and Inter-American Development Bank. She was a senior economist working in economy or economic development and corporate finance, working on several federal budgets. Keisha was part of the Prime Minister's delegation to World Economic Forum in 2018, as well as East Asia Summit in Singapore. She led an events such as Fortune Most Powerful Women in, Summit in Montreal, Canada, and the Fortune Global Forum. Keisha is a graduate of the Executive Leadership Program at Harvard University John F. Kennedy School of Government. Keisha is also a mom of three kids, co founder of Aspire Canada, a featured expert at U Inc., author, and is also passionate about gender equality and women economic empowerment. Hi, Keisha. Welcome to the show. How are you guys doing over there in Canada?
We're well. Thanks for having me on the show, Nicole. It's great to be here.
Okay. So we're going to jump into things. Briefly, take us through the experience of becoming a brand new mom and then have to go through the difficult and unexpected emotions from shock, guessing to anger to disbelief, and of course, profound sadness of losing your husband.
Yeah, so yes, it was the most traumatic period in my life. And you can imagine, Nicole, as a mom yourself, having just given birth to a child 8 weeks prior and
Right,
having another child at 3 years old, and then having your spouse die tragically and unexpectedly from a disease that most doctors have never seen in their lifetime and will only see in textbooks because it's so rare. They have no experience, no frame of reference for it. And so that's what happened to me. And it took practically a year for us to get the autopsy results because it was so rare. They had to
right.
put together a panel of experts from across North America to come together to examine the case
Wow.
um, because it was so rare. They had to bring in pathologists and investigative coroners and all of that.
Right,
And so when I finally got the autopsy report, I literally cried, just looking at it and seeing this disease that I'd never heard about. I couldn't even pronounce the name and thinking, wow, lightning just struck my household. I felt like it was just so bizarre, the circumstances, that I
right.
really had to take a step back um, just to process it and to figure out how I would, live my life going forward, and how I would, as a
Right.
single mom with two young kids, and how I would reinvent.
Right. I can imagine that must have been really difficult for you. And then having to look at the kids and, what do I tell them? What do you tell them? I mean, I can't imagine as a mom having to go through all of that all at the same time. And then being a brand new mom can be so overwhelming all by itself. And then having to deal with one of the most traumatic things that can happen to you while dealing with that in the process.
Yeah, no, it was very traumatic. And as you mentioned, the children, it was traumatic for Matthew, who was 3 at the time, because he literally saw an ambulance come home, take his dad, and his dad didn't come home that night. His
Right.
dad wasn't sick. He didn't see his dad suffering or anything. As far as he was concerned, his dad went in an ambulance and didn't come back. And so for years afterwards, anytime he saw an ambulance, he ran and just
Oh,
cried.
wow.
was that was what took his dad, and sirens and all of that
right,
him. So yeah, for us it took a long time of healing and trying to come to terms with what happened.
right, right. I can imagine. I can't. Yeah, that's just trying to put myself in your shoes, and it's difficult. Okay,
Mhm.
and of course, with all that, having to deal with all these emotions and trying questioning everything. I'm guessing you were questioning. I have all these questions. Why you? Why? You know, why? Um,
Exactly, exactly. And like I talk about that in the book, and I talk about it in the article, how I went around and round in circles again and again and again. Things I should have picked up on and I should have
right,
done but didn't do. And why me? Why us? Why now? Why so early?
right,
6 weeks after giving birth.
right.
Um, and I in the book I call those the dry bones, and
Okay,
and the things, the regrets, and the feelings of anger and frustration and guilt, and
right,
this nonstop thinking, going around in circles, and I had to deal with that, and I had to figure out a way to get rid of those dry bones and to move
right.
forward and to have a new script in my head and not the same script going over and over
Over
again
and over.
about
Right,
circumstances. And the night the ambulance came, because of course I would play that script over in my mind again and again and again, from the time the ambulance came to we got to the ER, to the nurses not feeling a pulse, to them not saying one side is basically gone and blood flow is lessening, and then to the and
right,
so I had to figure out, and this is like a case study. We talk about this, and I know some people listening might not have gone through this, but this is like a typical case study of how to emerge from any experience or any setback where it causes you to think over and over again about the situation and what you could have done and what went wrong
right,
and could have been to blame, and
right.
so
Definitely.
exactly, and so I had to reemerge and get those thoughts out and find a way to actually reverse the script in my own mind.
Right. And with that said, I know you basically took to writing. You wrote an article in 2017 about my husband died at age 34, and here are 40 life lessons I learned from that. And the article went viral. And from the article, you talked about the book, Birth, the book that we're talking about, Holistic Wealth, 32 Life Lessons to Help You Find Purpose, Prosperity, and Happiness. So get a little bit more into the book and share with us. Of course, the link is going to be in the show notes below for our listeners if they want to go ahead and grab a copy of the book. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I had written this article from a place of sheer vulnerability. It
Right,
was the most vulnerable piece of writing I'd ever done. And I
right,
talked about how I walked into the hospital with my husband living and breathing, and walked out back with a white plastic bag with his personal effects. And I'll
right,
never forget that, because you know how we talk about this whole concept of holistic wealth, which we'll get further into
right,
this interview. But that's what brought it home to me, was everything can change in the blink of an eye.
right.
And no matter what your net worth, all of that can just disappear in a
Yes,
second, because I walked into the hospital room with my husband, living and breathing.
and walked
Um,
out without
and
him.
exactly. And I got back a white plastic bag with valuable stuff, his wedding ring, jewelry, valuable stuff. And it
Right,
meant nothing at that point, absolutely nothing. And so I wrote that article from that place. And yeah, it went viral. Lots of people. I got so many emails and Facebook messages, and people reached out to me from CNBC and Fast Company, like different news anchors who saw it.
right,
Um, and I had no idea that they had read it. I had no idea it was even spreading like wildfire. And
right.
it was an agent who said to me, "This is the book you need to write." Because at the time I was pitching out this memoir, and
Uh-huh.
everyone was like, "No, you're not a celebrity. Nobody's going to want your memoir." And
Right,
so said, "Write this book." And I thought, wow, I'm going to have to put down a whole manuscript and write a new book. And I
Right.
did. And so I wrote that book, and luckily there are elements that I could draw from in the memoir. And
Yes.
I did that because in the book you'll see there's a lot of personal stories. There's a
Right.
lot of it tells the entire story from beginning to end
Right.
in addition
Definitely.
to the self-help portion. And so that's what I did. And I'm glad I did that because there's so many messages that I wanted to send to women, to young people, to
Right.
people facing setbacks that I wouldn't have been able to do through a memoir, but I got
Right.
the opportunity to do it through this form of writing. And so that message of holistic wealth being a framework for helping you get through setbacks is
Right.
something that, it's almost like a gift that I got from that article.
Right. Okay. And so the way I look at it is like a lot of times coming being vulnerable with our fears, our weakness, our times of the things that we go through. A lot of times, sometimes we go through them, and as bad it may be sound, it take us losing certain things or certain things happening to us for us to get to a place where we can empower others and maybe share, because a lot of times they tell you your purpose is not for you, it's for somebody else. And
Mhm.
so you being able to take what you've gone through and be able to share that from a very vulnerable place, and in so doing helped other people, whether it is in healing or seeing that somebody else is going through the same thing. And you know what it is? I can get through it too.
Yes, no, exactly. And you're right, because in the book, there's this line that I have in there about this line from Viktor Frankl, who
Right,
wrote, "You detect your purpose in life." And it's so true. You don't create it, it gets shown to you, and you detect
right,
it based on your story and the experiences that you've been through. And in the book, I talk about your story of self being so
right.
unique, because each of us is so unique. And
Yes,
this is why we can support each other, because I have my experiences, Nicole, you have your
yes,
experiences, and each of us is here to empower humanity in some other way through our
right.
experiences, through our unique circumstances. And that's exactly how each of us manifest our purpose. And it's so unique to us, and it's like a gift. And so you're right. When something like this happens, even though it's so tragic, it
Yes,
helped me detect my purpose.
right.
um and even though I was working in a field, and I'm still working in that field, which has helped me tremendously with this, I know for sure 100% that this message of telling people who have been through setbacks that you can
Yes,
achieve holistic wealth is my message.
yes, 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 definitely. Okay, so I mean, of course, setback, vulnerability, I'm just pulling keywords out of it. And sometimes, yes, we go through things and we ask questions why, but sometimes if we only embrace what's happening, not to say you don't mourn and you don't go through the phases, but then also look for the lessons in it, in the process, and then use that to heal.
Right, exactly. And that's how I came up with the lessons in the article, and now in the book. That in the article it was 40 life lessons, and we've now condensed it to 32, because some of them were, like a bit
Yes,
overlapping. So
right,
each and every one of those lessons helped me overcome and helped me to reinvent myself, and to
right,
live a life that I would want to leave, and a legacy for my kids
right.
and
To
humanity.
recover and then to move forward in a
And
way where it
for
does, right. Okay. So
exactly.
share with us the whole idea of the holistic wealth method.
Right. So the holistic wealth method is a method I came up with because, while I was writing, I
Mhm.
thought about how we make our decisions in life,
Right,
and in the book, I talk about how we make over 36,000 decisions every single day.
right,
And can you imagine if we were to take a step back and to think about whether each of those decisions represents an addition or a depletion to our holistic wealth bank
right.
account?
I,
And
I, I like I like that whole approach to deposits and withdrawals. I use this every now and then in a different way in terms of withdrawal and deposits, because I like to talk about people, you have people who only withdraw from you, whether it be people, things, whatever it is. And then, but you also want to make the deposits that's going to help you grow. So I like that whole idea of deposits and withdrawal. So, continue to tell us a bit more about that.
Right. And so, like when I went through my grief, right? Like I talk about the naysayers in the book. So I like how you bring up, the toxic relationship,
Right.
because when you're going through a setback, people have a way of like forcing their opinions on you, right? And then you
Right.
have, people who will make statements, um, permanent statements of permanence, like,
Right.
oh, you will never do this again, and you don't have a husband now, so you can't really do that. And
Right.
so this is how I came up with it, because I thought, you know what? I've been through the worst experience through in my life, and
Right.
now I want to move forward, and I want the positive around me, not the negative.
Right.
So is this relationship an addition or a depletion to my holistic wealth bank account? And this is how I move forward, thinking about not just relationships, but the food I was eating,
Right.
the money decisions and the financial decisions I was making, and thinking about every decision as either an addition or a depletion to my holistic wealth bank
Right.
account. I had to make some tough choices coming out of a setback like that, in terms of redefining myself, having the people around me who I knew would enrich me,
Yes.
spiritually, emotionally, and in every other way I needed, so that I could chart up a positive life going forward with my two kids.
Yes.
So I had to be thinking that way in order to reemerge. When you go through something like this,
Yes.
it tells you in a lot of ways who your friends are, who are the
Oh,
people that
that's
you
most
really.
definitely true.
Exactly, exactly. And I'm sure most people listening can relate in some way or shape or form. Whether it's like a divorce or another type of setback, it shows you who your true friends are. And
And it
yeah,
also shows you how strong you are, whether you know force you to make decisions that you would have never made before, that you would have probably shied away from. Because even for myself, you talk about divorce, going through a divorce and going through different stages and phases and worried about what other people got to say, and then wait a minute, oh wait a minute, let me slow down for a bit. Does their decision make an impact on me living, paying my bills, doing all this other stuff? Then why am I so worried about what other people think, or
yeah,
what they maybe, what they do, what they think does not really impact me per se. I still got to live my life and I still got to keep going. So I do understand what you're saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, for sure. And it was the same thing, the same idea, and same thing with me. I mean, people made pronouncements on my kids and whether they'd ever be able to move forward and be well adjusted. And I mean, the range of opinions was just a lot. And you're right. I took a lot of measured risks, and I have a whole chapter in the book on taking measured risks, because I realized
Uh-huh.
that in order to live in this holistically wealthy state, that I would have to now take on some measured risks. Like things that I would never have thought about doing, I had to do, like taking a sabbatical,
Right.
to recharge and to renew myself,
Right.
and taking charge of my own finances, and doing things like that.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah,
And I know you shared some examples of, withdrawals from your holistic bank account, toxic relationship. Of course, you talked about spending too much, social media, of course, like today, so much of us, we're in social media. I know even for me, it's work, but at the same time, some days I just have to withdraw, because you're on there long enough and then you start comparing yourself. You don't mean to, but it's like, okay, now you're looking at everybody else's highlight reel and wondering what's going on with you, instead of saying, wait a minute, I have this going on, I have that going on. But now we start sizing up what everybody else is doing, and in turn start making ourselves feel bad. And I actually just wrote an article where you're talking about, we got to be able to admire other people's beauty, what they're doing, but at the same time without diminishing the things that we're doing and our results.
yeah, no, for sure. And I have a whole chapter in the book on not comparing yourself. It's one of the life lessons, because I
Yes.
had to take a step back. When you're going through a setback like that, and you're right, you look on the social media and you look at everybody else, you think, oh my gosh, what's going on with me? What
Right.
is happening here? Right? And
Yeah.
and that's why a whole chapter in there.
Hmm.
And everything kind of integrates and intertwines. When we talk about, additions and depletions to the holistic wealth bank account, social media can become a depletion because
Uh-huh.
then you start comparing and you think, what's wrong with me?
Right.
And so that's why I
Questioning your
got
worth.
exactly, and that's why I got into the book about even having a personal mission statement because I feel like each of us has a purpose, and if we can identify that and write our mission down, then we wouldn't have to compare ourselves to anybody else, social
Uh,
media and all, because we know that we're living in our purpose. That's
Right.
based on our story of self. It's unique. It's unique to me. It's mine, and it's based on my experiences, and it's something that I know I'm going to be stepping forward in. And
Right.
so
It's
that's how.
authentically you. So I'm glad you brought up the whole idea of personal mission statement. That's, like I said, that's something I believe in strongly, firmly. I actually teach it to my clients. It's absolutely necessary to the right one because it kind of outlines that vision for yourself, that vision for your life, and it's like a guide, walking you through that. So, what made you think about now, okay, let me go about writing a personal mission statement? What kind of led you to that?
Yeah, so after I did my sabbatical and I had lots of time to think and I thought about my life, I realized, right? Because when I thought about the white plastic bag again, going back to that with the jewelry and the wedding ring in there, I realized, it's more than just my life is more than just my title at work. It's more than just my salary. It's more than just things that we would ascribe to our
The
identity.
material things.
Exactly, material things. It's larger than that, and it's a mission that transcends that. And I realized on sabbatical that if we don't have this mission in life,
Right.
then it's easy for us to go astray. It's easy for us to just kind of go where the wind blows, and
Right.
we're not really living in our purpose. And so it kind of grounds you in that because then you're like, okay, I know what my mission is, and I know what I need to do.
Right. And I, like you said, when you don't have a clear mission statements, which basically covers, everything from your values and ends up in you setting goals and laying out all these ideas of your why and everything else, it kind of makes it easy. So whichever way the wind blows, if somebody say, let's do this, that's what you'll do. You're not worried about whether or not it aligns with your purpose on the goals or the things that you're looking to get done. And so, of course, when you talked about, all these people making pronouncements on you and figuring out, who do I keep in my life and who do I, say goodbye to, I think that helps to kind of guide the decisions we make and how we approach life moving forward.
Yeah, no, for sure. It absolutely does. And, at first it might be difficult because, and I say this in the book, you might feel guilty at first in terms of relationships about,
Right.
saying goodbye to some. You might wonder whether you're making the right decision. But and as I say this in the book, everybody's for a season, and look at it that you're stepping into your purpose, you're
Yes.
stepping into your mission, and you're not looking back. You're going forward. You're not carrying any negativity or toxic relationships
And
with you.
dropping all the weight that's
You're
holding you back.
dropping off weight because you need to move forward in a purposeful, positive way. And so don't feel guilty. Don't feel bad. This is something that you absolutely need to do for you to move forward and to live the best life you can.
Definitely. I think a lot of people, um, like we said, we be so worried about everyone else, about losing this person and that person, and we don't realize that once we stay in that mindset, that fixed mindset instead of that growth mindset, what happens is we'll never achieve what it is that we're looking to achieve. We'll never move from one place to the next. We never, move to a higher level because we allow people to hold us back. And the way I look at it, if anything, why not go forward and let them see you be the example and then come along with you rather than have them keep you back?
Right, exactly. Because in the book and I talk about the holistic wealth mindset,
Right.
and most of these negative relationships, most of these people in our lives have like a scarcity mindset
Yes.
where they put you in a box and they see you in this position right now and they think, yeah, that's your box. So you stay in your box this is who you are, and this is what you can do within that box. And once you start to believe that, then it
Yes.
limits how much you want to to achieve your dream, right? And you think, yeah, you're right. Maybe if I don't have X, Y, or Z, I really can't do this. But
Right.
and that's why those people are depletion to our holistic wealth bank account, because it's too much negativity, and they make us believe in these very toxic messages.
Right. That we self the negative self talk that we give ourselves.
Right.
Okay. Um. So share with us a few one or two more of these life lessons that kind of helped to pull you through and helped you recover through this life changing ordeal.
Yeah. So apart from, well, the sabbatical was one of the major ones, because there's so many insights that I got from just taking a step back and
Yes.
having the chance to examine my life, to meditate, to eat well, to exercise. A lot of
Uh-huh.
that started in earnest on sabbatical, because I had the time to explore, what I wanted to do, how I was going to live my life. And so a lot of the life lessons came out of that. And so even when I talk about intuition, it's something that I've written about a lot. It was on sabbatical that it just erupted like a volcano. And it's because I emptied myself of, all the busyness and the stress, and I
Right.
had time to tune in to what my heart and my mind was telling me. And so those things are key. And one of the things I talk about is, you mentioned values in terms of setting your personal mission statement, is having goals with wisdom. Like
Yes.
sometimes we set goals and they're not aligned with our values. We set them because maybe society says you should do
Right.
this.
We set the cool goals, not the
Right.
smart goals, and identify, what why do I want to achieve this? And it works for us. That's why I tell people I don't believe in New Year's resolution, because that's just short term,
Right.
cool goals that people set because everybody else is doing it. But you want to create a lifestyle and activities that is aligned with your life's purpose and your vision of what it is that you're looking to achieve, and then break it down daily and work towards that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is something that came to me time and time again as I was looking back at the type of lifestyle I wanted to create. And see, this is the
Right.
thing about holistic wealth, you know, because a lot of us, we start out as, climbing the corporate ladder, and it's
Right.
great. It's good to have ambition, and it's great. But then when a setback comes, you realize, what do I really value?
Value.
And what's most important to me in terms of my values. And you really have to dig deep to really be true to yourself, to say, you know what, at the end of the day, my
Uh-huh.
family and my kids, and spending that quality time is what really counts. And
Right.
I go back to that white plastic bag all the time, and I think to myself, wow, this is what life can be reduced to in an instant. And
Yes.
so where are your priorities? Where do they
Where do
lie?
they lie? It's
Yeah.
I'm loving this, and another reason I'm loving this, because a lot of times I get through my clients, and of course I have entrepreneurs that I work with and stuff, and a lot of times before we start getting into things, I'll take them through the self actualization framework where we go into self awareness and all the stuff, and then I'll force them to go through thinking about their why and what success means to them and me in 3 words, and then I have them go through the things that I value. What are, because if you don't know what you value, then it becomes anything. And somebody say this is what it is, and like you said, life can be reduced to nothing if what it is that you're working towards. And so I'm loving this because especially for my clients who be listening, they're gonna go, oh wow, this is all the things that Nicole you know drills into our head. So I'm loving this right now. Okay,
Yeah.
so um, as far as goals, okay, so SMART goals. So what vision board? Because we were talking about life mission and stuff. I'm a big fan of vision board. What's your outlook on vision boards?
I love vision boards too. And I think they're very, very helpful and impactful in terms of having like a vision of where we want to go forward and what it looks like.
Right.
And I mentioned in the book that, when my husband died, I was on a track. I was young, but young, much younger, and I was on a track to becoming an executive. I was handpicked, within 2 years to graduate from this executive program,
Right.
and he died, and all of that went to the side, and I had to reevaluate, and
Yes.
and so when I think about goals, I think about detours because I feel like my life took a detour,
Uh-huh.
and I was on one road, and then he died, and I had to take a detour. And
Right.
one of the things I say in the book is plan ahead with knowing that there'll be detours up
Yeah,
ahead.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah, because and that's key because a lot of times we're planning, but we're not thinking about, the threats and the stuff, the possibilities of stuff that may get in the way. You plan for the potholes, basically. What happens if I hit a pothole? What do I do? And I like that you say detour because it's not just to say, it's just about reassessing. Okay, what do I need to do a little bit differently? It doesn't change my vision of, well, in some cases, depending on the road they're on, but at the same time, what do I do differently now, um, based on my reassessed values and my whys and all that stuff going on. Okay.
Exactly. And I love how you brought up the entrepreneurs that you coach because like I interviewed many. I interviewed maybe about 100 and some of their stories are in the book. And when we talk about entrepreneurship, it's filled with potholes. It's filled with detours.
Right.
And one of the things I learned from my experience, especially with, how I talked about the dry bones
Yes.
and things you should have done and what you should have, things you should have and what could have been. And the reason why I love the concept of detours so much is that a lot of us get stuck thinking about the road we were once on. And we look at that as like the high road. And we get stuck thinking about, wow, I was on XYZ path. And if this didn't happen, I wouldn't have been in this situation. But no,
Right.
look back at that road that as a road that you've conquered. Like think of yourself as a detour slayer. And so you're on this other road now, you're on this detour. Think about how you're going to slay this detour and think of that one as a road or a setback that you've conquered. And that will
Right.
help you in terms of how you move forward and think about that road more as a learning experience and
Right.
that you come out of it in a better place.
Definitely.
And so,
Okay.
yeah, I love that experience about talking about the entrepreneurs because as I interviewed many of them, I there's so many insights coming out and so many lessons, and these lessons can be applied to many life situations.
Definitely. Okay. So at this place where you are now, going through all of that, what would you, because a lot of times one of the things, and I know you mentioned that too, when you go through such a traumatic experience and you're going through it, you have family and friends, they're giving you advice and they're telling you all these things. What would you now today look at your 31-year-old self who just gave birth and then, now being told that your husband's gone? What one piece of advice would you give yourself then in that moment?
I would say to myself, and don't think that this is going to or has to define you.
Right.
Don't think for 1 minute that you're not going to get through this, that there's no light at the end of the tunnel, that this is it for you. Because I kid you not, at the time it happened, I thought this was it for me. I
Right.
thought my life was over, that any other goals I had
Right.
as a single mom now with 2 kids, it was it. And those were the messages that I was getting subliminally as a female,
Right.
not having a male around anymore.
Right.
And I could have sat back and said, well, it's probably true. There's nothing else out there and this is it.
Right.
But I didn't. I had to get back up and dig deep, and I took risks, like lots of risks, and still invested, still saved, still managed to come out better than I was before, even financially. And so this is what I want women to know and men out there that you can do it. You can come back from a setback. and you can be stronger than before.
Got stronger than before. That's a good message. Okay, so as we wrap up, let's just jump into a couple quick fun facts. Okay, hot chocolate, coffee, or tea?
Hot chocolate.
Okay, that's a girl after my own heart. I'm a hot chocolate girl. Okay, your go-to beauty product.
Mascara.
Okay, um, what specific brand? Let me
Right
see.
now, I'm using, oh my gosh, I forgot the brand. It's a very popular one though.
Maybelline.
It's not Maybelline. It's one of
Okay,
the older, more
okay,
brands.
all right. The one statement piece that makes you feel powerful, like I can conquer the world.
Heels.
Yours. Okay. Your best self-care tip.
Take time for yourself and renew and rejuvenate.
Okay. And what's the best advice that you have ever received?
Wow, that's a hard one. I've received so much good advice. I had a lot of the naysayers, but I've gotten so much good advice. It's not fun. It's hard to pick um, the best advice I've gotten,
Okay.
but I think I'll remember something because my mom was a cheerleader for me when I went through this, and she gave
Right.
up a job to come to help me with the kids when it happened.
Right.
And I put this in the book, and I put this in there in terms of the message that she has been sending me
Right.
childhood. And she's always said to me, tell yourself that I can, I will, and I must. And
Right.
through all of this, I've said to myself, I can, I will, and I must. I have to get through this, and I must, and I will get through this. So I think, in terms of thinking about something that's impacted me, that's kind of the one message.
And I think that couldn't be a more better way to end. I can, I will, and I must. Okay, Keisha. I do, enjoy chatting with you. Thanks for sharing, with us, and tell us what's next, and also share with us how our audience can connect with you.
Yeah, so there's a personal workbook coming out the end of February,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what's next. It's a companion workbook to the book, and it
Okay.
will guide you on things like crafting your own personal mission statement and thinking about your goals and your values, that type of thing, in
Okay.
addition to some financial planning aspects.
Okay.
And in terms of where to find me, like my website is www.keishablair.com, and that's my main website. Feel free to reach out to me there. I'm on social media. My handle is at Keisha Blair, and that's for Instagram and Twitter, and I'm on Facebook as well. I love hearing from readers and from the audience about how they're making changes in their lives. So like
Right.
I would love to hear from people.
Okay, Keisha, thanks again. I really do appreciate you coming on and sharing with us. And like you said, I can, I will, and I must.
Thanks, Nicole. It was great to be here.